more about voter behavior in the 2024 election thanks to some new data. Earlier this month, Illinois' State Board of Elections certified the numbers across the state, and here's what they found. Voter turnout was down this year in Illinois. There are just over 8 million registered voters in the state, and about 70% cast a ballot this year. That is the fourth lowest turnout in Illinois in just the last 40 years. I know it's a little bit hard to see here, but you can tell right here the registered number of voters that actually cast a ballot versus those that are just registered. And if you zoom into just Chicago, the third largest city in the country, voter turnout was the second lowest in a presidential race in 80 years. But a record-setting amount of people voted early this year. More than 1 in 3 Illinois voters cast their ballot in person before Election Day. So if you include mail-in ballots, 53% of people didn't vote on November 5th, which is only the second time in the state's history where that's happened. But what else does this tell us about voting shifts? For that, we turn to Ben Zielinski, State House reporter for Capital News Illinois, the state's largest government-focused news bureau. Ben, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Shelby.
Why don't we start with Vice President Kamala Harris. She won Illinois by nearly 11 points, which is historic, but not in the way Democrats wanted. What's the significance here?
Yeah, the big difference is that Donald Trump lost in Illinois by 17 points in both 2016 and 2020. Now this year, he managed to cut down that margin to 11 points. The reason 11 points is a big deal is because that's the lowest number of votes for a Democratic presidential candidate since 2004 when John Kerry won Illinois by also 11 points. So between Donald Trump's big losses, the last two elections, Barack Obama winning big, of course, in Illinois, the first two times he ran, it's a big loss of votes that we saw for Kamala Harris this year.
Yeah, and we want to put this into context for people. It's not just that Trump maybe got more voters, but we see that Harris got 400,000 fewer votes than Biden in Illinois this year. I mean, what can we glean from the numbers here? Is that result for Harris, the shrinking margin, is that because more people are voting Republican or just because less people are turning out to vote?
Yeah, not necessarily. I think, Donald Trump received virtually the exact same number of votes. When you have almost 6 million people voting in a state, the difference of 2,000 votes is not very big. So Donald Trump only increasing his vote margin by 2,000 votes this year, it seems like he essentially received the same number of votes. People didn't really change their minds about him. His supporters stayed with him, and nobody really moved over to his camp from the Biden-Harris ticket, for example. But now Kamala Harris receiving more than 400,000 less votes than Joe Biden did 4 years ago. I think it really shows that a lot of voters were probably just unhappy with her. They didn't go over and support Trump. What they did was essentially stay home. And we see that in the lower turnout number with Trump receiving the exact same number of votes, but Harris seeing fewer votes this time around. It really shows that I think turnout was part of the deal here for Harris. And that's the trend we saw nationally too, that she received less votes in many states and turnout was down, especially here in Illinois.
Yeah, we're showing that chart there from your article, Ben, right now. Yeah, even just thinking about that stat from Chicago, one of the lowest presidential turnouts in 80 years, nearly a century. What about the other races in Illinois beyond the presidential one? If Democrats were having a tough time in that race, did that also happen in other races across the state?
It was kind of a mixed bag for Democrats. They managed to hold every congressional seat. We saw that, especially here in the Quad Cities with Eric Sorensen. He won a pretty convincing victory, even though some folks thought that was going to be a closer race. The closest congressional race actually turned out to be a suburban Democrat, Sean Casten, in the Naperville area. But the difference, I think, for Democrats in Illinois is they didn't add any new seats in the legislature in Springfield. They had 78 Democrats in the Illinois House going into this election. They're coming out with the exact same number. There was no Democrats who lost. Every seat that was up for re-election this year is staying with the exact same party that represented that district going into this election. So Democrats in Illinois, they were able to hold their ground, but I think partially because of some of these lower turnout numbers we saw with people staying home unhappy apparently about Kamala Harris, it didn't really translate into any additional victories for Democrats here in Illinois, though it's important to note they didn't lose anything either.
Ben, you got a tough job taking all of this data and making it digestible for all of us. Thank you so much for your time here today and your reporting.
Thanks, Shelby.
And hey, you guys at home, Ben has compiled all of this data into a readable version as well. To check out his full article, you can head over to our website and click on the As Seen on TV tab. And for those of you in Iowa, I didn't forget about you. We know that just over 74% of registered voters in Iowa cast a ballot in this year's election. That's a higher turnout than Illinois had. That's about 1.6 million Iowans, and that nearly broke 2020's record. However, there were more than 300,000 less early votes in Iowa this year for a total of about 40% of the vote.